welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a single, really action-packed chapter from an ancient text. But here's the twist. We're not going to look at it as scripture. Nope. We're going to analyze it like a historian would to see how it was basically engineered to make this incredibly powerful, persuasive argument about its main character.
So let's just dive right in. The big question for us today is all about the story itself. How does the author of Matthew 9 use all these storytelling tricks to build a figure of just immense, multifaceted authority in what is really just a few short, rapid-fire scenes?
Okay, so to do this, we're going to put on our historian hats. We're not just looking at what the text says on the surface. We're trying to figure out what it was designed to do for its original readers. How its very structure and its message were built to convince them of something huge.
And this is the key thing to keep in your head through all of this. For our analysis, we are not debating whether these events actually happened. That's not the question. Instead, we're asking why these specific stories were chosen, why they were put in this particular order, and what kind of argument they build when you put them all together. It's all about shifting your perspective, right? You stop looking at history as just a list of stuff that happened, and you start seeing it as a story that someone is telling you, for a reason.
So, the very first pillar of authority the author builds is this power to just redefine the social and religious rules of the day. And man, the chapter kicks off with a claim that would have been genuinely, absolutely shocking to its original audience.
So you gotta notice, there's no warm-up here. Right out of the gate, the central character does something that, for the religious authorities of the time, was something only God could do: forgive sins. And what's so brilliant about this is how the author includes witnesses, the scribes, and lets us in on their thoughts. This fellow is blaspheming. That creates instant drama, and it confirms for us, the reader, just how radical and challenging this claim really is.
Okay, to get what happens next, you have to understand this bit of context. Tax collectors, they weren't just guys with an unpopular job. No, they were seen as traitors, as collaborators with the Roman occupation. They were considered ritually unclean. They were at the absolute bottom of the social ladder. And then, boom, the author just drives the point home. We see Jesus not only call one of these outcasts, a guy named Matthew, to be one of his closest followers, but then he goes to his house and eats dinner with all his friends. For the Pharisees, who were super strict about their purity laws, sharing a meal was a big deal. It was an act of fellowship, of acceptance. So to do that with sinners, that was a radical move, a deliberate choice to identify with the people on the margins of society.
So you're starting to see the pattern, right? It's clear, it's deliberate. The author is building authority by showing this character systematically taking apart the established rules. First the big religious ones, then the social ones. It's a very calculated argument for a whole new kind of power, one that just doesn't play by the existing rules.
All right, on to the second part of the argument. After challenging human authority, the story completely shifts gears. Now it's all about demonstrating absolute power over the physical world, over sickness, over nature, and believe it or not, even over life itself.
And this is where the chapter really just hits the accelerator. The author doesn't hang around on any one of these events. Instead, we get this dense, almost dizzying sequence of healings. It's like the author is just piling up the evidence, one piece after another, to make a case that's impossible to argue with. It really feels like you're right there, watching one incredible thing happen after another.
And just look at the range here. The author is building this comprehensive portfolio of power. This isn't just, one specialty. The text is claiming authority over paralysis, over chronic illness, over blindness, demonic possession, and then, the biggest one of all, death itself.
And you can see this deliberate escalation, can't you? The displays of power get bigger and more significant as the chapter goes on. It moves from fixing an illness to reversing a permanent disability. And then it all culminates in the ultimate show of force, having authority over the line between life and death. That is intentional, powerful storytelling, all designed to build to a major crescendo.
The sheer concentration of these miracles is a huge part of the strategy here. By packing so many different powerful events into such a tiny space, the author creates this feeling of relentless, undeniable power. The density, that's part of the argument.
Okay, so let's step back for a second. What's the big picture when we put these two themes together? What's the combined effect of showing authority over both human rules and the laws of nature?
This table really breaks it down for us.
You've got one track over here where the author shows a figure who can rewrite the rules of society and religion. Then you have this other track showing a figure with total control over the physical world. Put them together and you get this really comprehensive case for a new and total kind of power that transcends everything.
So when you look at it this way, through that historian's lens, Matthew chapter 9 isn't just some random list of things that happened. No way. It is a masterful, super efficient, and incredibly potent piece of persuasive writing, engineered from the first word to the last to build a legend.
And that's really the big question the chapter leaves us with, isn't it? Is it a historical account, or is it a masterful piece of persuasion? Well, maybe the answer is, it's both. It shows us how a powerful, well-told story doesn't just record history, it has the power to actually create it by shaping beliefs that can literally change the world.